You're right. We did call the pit in the library the well. I guess the teachers didn't like calling it the pit. But it really was a well, because when we first moved in, we had a heck of a time getting the water out of that well. I thought we'd have to have, like swimming lessons there or something until we got the water out. But they finally got the water out, and we were okay. Now, the last time I spoke to you, I had spoken to you about the personnel in the offices, and I told you how wonderful Mr. Fogler was. I'll tell you one more story about Mr. Fogler. We were in the school the first week in whenever we opened it, 73, 74, whatever.
76.
75. 75, 76.
75.
Okay. And we were walking in the hall upstairs, and the language from the students was impossible. The F word, they were awful. And I would stop and say, that's not appropriate in this school. That's not right in this school, whatever. And he got me down the hall, and he says to me, it's your choice. If you want to spend all your time stopping the children, stopping the students, and telling them not to say those words, you can do that. Or you can shut your ears to the words and go ahead and really do what you're supposed to do as the principal of the school. And he was right. He really was right. That was the year we had 9th graders in the school. Now, Mr. Donahue. Frank Donahue came to us from being a guidance counselor way in North Jersey. It's, I'll think of the name. It's
Orange.
He had worked in Orange, but then he went even further north. It's where my cousin Susan lives. I'll have to think.
You have a cousin Susan?
Yes, Susan Hodis. Susan Vineburg Hodis.
Okay.
And it was a long trip down, and he came that summer before we opened the school for an interview. I had interviewed another person too, very qualified, fine. And Frank came to see me at my home. And we had a little
lunch.
No, card room. What did we call that?
The playroom.
The playroom. And we sat in the playroom, and I went in and got coffee and, of course, some Danish or something. And we sat there, and we put our coffee cups and our plates on the edge of a bookcase that was there. It was almost like a little desk there. And we're talking, and the next thing I know, Frank spills the coffee cup all over him and the carpet and so forth. And he's apologizing. I said, that's perfectly all right. I'll always remember which candidate you are for the position. And there was just something about him. He was brought up in a parochial school, and he had very strict standards. And I was really looking for someone like that, because Mr. Fogler was very laid back. I was something in between, and so I felt, especially to be the new 9th grade assistant principal, and those 9th graders were not happy about coming from Dow Avenue to the middle school. They wanted to go to the high school. But there was no room at the high school. So I thought, he'll be a good choice. He has high school experience. He's tough. He's funny. I'm going to hire him. Well, the superintendent was not happy. Mr. Mann was not happy. And he said to me, the Board of Education wants you to write a note to them saying if you ever knew Mr. Donahue before the interview. In other words, was he a friend of yours from the past? And I wrote the letter and I said, no, I never met him until I gave him the date. And that was very interesting. And then I was so annoyed because they really gave me a bad time. And I had a pain in my neck from the time I recommended him until the time I hired him. Now, some of you might say, well, then you gave us the pain in the neck. But Mr. Donahue fulfilled the role perfectly. He was strict. He was cooperative. He was a great assistant to me. I know he wasn't the favorite of some of the students, but that's because he was strict. And he was different than Mr. Fogler and me. But I want to tell you, he loved his kids that he had there. He entertained some at his home at the end of the year. He spent time in the cafeteria with them. And
he was always nice to us.
oh, he was wonderful. You know, he was such a good friend that when my mother passed away, that was 1993. She was, God bless her, 98 years old. And before I knew it, it was in June. And before I knew it, half the round tables from the cafeteria were in my house for the people who were coming, back after the funeral service. He was a takeover person, and I liked that. And one time, my wife and I were sitting watching television. We heard this creaking sound, and the next thing I know, water is pouring on top of the dining room table, on the rug, all over. The air conditioner, something with some kind of a pan that caught the water from condensation. See, I was never good at science. Well, anyhow, came through the roof. So who did I call? I had family there, but I knew who to call. I called Frank Donahue, and he and his wife, they left the 4 children home, and they came over, and in no time at all, he had things straightened up. And, of course, we had to have a new ceiling put in. And that was also very interesting. The guys who fixed the ceiling, they were walking around. We had plywood up there in the attic, and he took a misstep, and his foot came through the floor. I know it might not have been that time, but it was a very interesting experience. Everything happened to that ceiling. Well, we lived through it. In the meantime, that was my story with Mr. Donahue. He is still my very good friend. I tell you something, he had 4 children. He has lots of grandchildren. Recently, he took his whole family, I think about 14 people, to France because his wife's father died on D-Day on the beaches, and he is buried there, and she had never visited her grave. She never knew her father, and so they made a pilgrimage to the cemetery near the beaches of France. Okay, I can continue talking, even though there's somebody who wants to talk to Richard.
Right.
Yes.
So
I'll keep on talking.
we're gonna end it for now.
Okay, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more stories.
Okay.
Bye.